Telebank users will be able to transfer funds between accounts, obtain up-to-the-minute balances, view and request statements, and order checkbooks. Soon, the bank hopes to complete negotiations with various local instrumentalities so bill payments can be effected. These include the water board, councils, the gas company, telecom, etc. The service can also provide up to the second financial and rural information and travel and holiday information through the bank's own travel service. The system called Telebank operates through Viatel, Telecom's national videotext network. Of course, one doesn't get such convenience for nothing. There are charges to be paid for hooking up and for each call. So people already with a home computer will be able to interface this with the system to save the $400 cost of a keyboard. The regional manager of the Commonwealth, Mr. Ray Hill, is confident the system will take off, particularly with rural-based customers.
In a very short space of time, you'll be able to sit in the home, pay your telephone bill, pay your water rates, pay your electricity bills, gas bills, and so on. You'll also be able to move money, and you can do it now, move money from one account to another, move money into your check account, and that's all done within the home.
Of course, it was inevitable it was going to come, but what do you see as the big advantage for the individual? Like, who's going to benefit most from this, do you see?
I think the person that will benefit mostly would be the man on the land, who, particularly those that haven't got ready access to large towns and cities. He'll be able to use his lounge room or his dining room by purely using the telephone and his TV set to get a wealth of information about the seasonal conditions, about travel, about exchange rates, which is all built into the Viatel.
Dr. Runcie, as Archbishop of Canterbury, is head of the worldwide Anglican Communion. He said his visit to Newcastle held special significance. His only remaining aunt lives here. He was also ordained in the Diocese of Newcastle in England. At a media conference,
well, you've got the mining industry, which is strong in our Newcastle area, and it was in that. In a short time, you've done great things, and you've got a fine history here, and you've got a cathedral that I can see which presides like a sentinel over the community. And I hope that the church will play its part in carrying the community here, in helping to carry the community here through times when there are new challenges, but also, I think, opportunities for the future.
Your Grace, what's the
Dr. Runcie met the clergy of the Diocese of Newcastle in the Cathedral Hall this afternoon. He spoke on the topic issues facing Anglicanism. Dr. Runcie will also preach at a special service of welcome at 7:30 this evening in Christchurch Cathedral.
There was no shortage of company executives on hand at the building centre last night to hear Richard Jennings speak. Mr. Jennings is a director of Webster's Investigation and has an impressive background in industrial security. He worked 14 years at New Scotland Yard and for 3 years with the FBI in Boston. He told the audience that bugging and stone tapping equipment is readily and legally available. It is only illegal to be caught using it. Later, Mr. Richards
you can buy them for as low as
$7 industrial espionage is an everyday occurrence.
The thing is,
it's becoming very common in Australia and throughout all of the major industrial cities, the capital cities, and Newcastle is no exception.
The technology involved in bugging and taping and listening in, is it anything like what we see on a James Bond movie?
No, it is far different from that, and in fact it's probably 10 years in advance of that. What you saw on the film last night was old hat many years ago.
What industries are most susceptible to the various forms of industrial espionage?
Well, most susceptible would be the obvious ones. Anybody in research and development, mining, exploration, the chemical companies, the drug companies, the computer software industry, anybody who's discovering anything. Marketing, insurance, finance, advertising, they've all fallen victim to this in recent times.
children
The book
representing
was
the high
launched before a
schools in
packed
Newcastle.
reception at
Our
Legacy
first
House
of all
in
call
Newcastle
upon
last
the
night.
lady Jo
The book was
Springthorpe to
edited by
come forward
Ray
representing
Connolly
the
and Bob
Newcastle.
Wilson, both members of the medical unit, the 210 Australian Field Ambulance 8th Division. The book tells the history of the unit, 30 words of some of its members, most of whom came from Newcastle. Medical Soldiers outlines the experiences of recruitment and training, the bitter Malaya and Rabaul campaigns, and the grim years as prisoners of the Japanese in Burma. Many of the unit's members died at Changi, on the Burma Railway, or during the Sandakan Desert. Copies of the book were presented to 4 local high schools to mark its release. The locally produced and written book is now on sale and has some timely Anzac Day reminders of the horrors of war.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. As many of you know, as far as I'm concerned, the greatest investment of all is owning your own home. And of course, I was absolutely delighted and excited when the government introduced the first homeowners assistance scheme, and what a boom that has been. But sad to say, there are rumours, and strong rumours, that they're going to curtail the benefits, and there are even suggestions that they might totally abandon the scheme. And that will be a very sad day for the home buyers of Australia, let alone the building industry. Now, I've always maintained that there are more than 100 industries involved in the construction and maintenance of a home, and that's why I'm emphasising the importance of the, shall we say, the negative approach if this should eventuate. Now, let's be a little personal. If you're on the verge of buying your own home, and you qualify in every sense of the word, both from the point of view of income and also from the point of view of marital status, well, then I wouldn't delay, because if those rumours and those predictions are correct, you might only have a few weeks or at the most a few months to act. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should rush in and buy willy-nilly, but what I am suggesting is that you should enter into that contract, because if we go back to the changes made with regard to single first home buyers, well then if there was a contract in existence at the time, there was no problem about qualifying. Now, the point I make is get moving, make sure that you take advantage of these very substantial tax-free benefits, which could be worth up to $7,000 depending upon one's marital or family situation, and that's why I'm suggesting that if you don't act now, you could miss out. I'll have more to say about the tax summit and also utilising, shall we say, the tax advantages and tax benefits along other lines of investment over the next couple of weeks. But in the meantime, don't forget my advice with regard to that all-important First Homeowners Assistance Scheme. And I'll see you next Monday. Good morning, everyone, and welcome once again. Over the past month or so, I have been suggesting that interest rates might tend to ease up, and sad to say, that is happening, and it might happen even more. That's why I've been adopting and suggesting a short-term investment approach, and that includes investing through one's bank, building society, credit union, cash management trusts, or if you have the funds, bank bills. I might add, over the last week or so, bank bills have been yielding close to 16%, and if we go back, say, 4 or 5 months, they were only yielding around 10%, so that's certainly a sizable increase. And as I suggested a couple of months ago, cash management trusts also are coming back into favour. Now, with cash management trusts, and we're looking at an initial minimum investment with some trusts like BA, Bank of America, of just $1,000, your money is available at 24-hour or daily call. And bearing in mind the recent increases in interest rates, which are now flowing through the cash management trusts, you can invest the $1,000 and upwards, or $5,000 and upwards, if we're looking at other trusts like Hill Samuel, to earn around 13%, 13.25%, 13.5%, and there is one trust that's paying in excess of 14%. Now, these are jolly good returns, remembering that in the majority of cases, cash management trusts only invest your money and mine in government securities and bank bills, so we're talking about guaranteed investments. Most of them offer telephone redemptions, so if, for example, you need some money, you just pick up the phone, say you'd like the money deposited or credited to your bank account, and it should be there the same day or the next day. ALAT, Australian Liquid Assets Trust, which is owned by the Australian Bank, also compounds their interest, or its interest, or your interest, on a daily basis. And that could be a well worthwhile additive in the sense of return if you leave your money there for a substantial period of time. Now, there are many to choose from. I've just given you a general idea with regard to cash management trusts, but for the time being, park your money and take advantage of what they're offering. I'll see you next Monday. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. If I ask the question, do you want to be in pictures, I'm not being facetious. What I'm talking about is investing in films. And bearing in mind that we've got a tax summit coming up in July, and we're undoubtedly going to see some profound changes to our tax laws, I think it might be a good time, and this includes the small investors of Australia, to look at investing in Australian films. Now let's look at the tax deductions. Firstly, you can receive or obtain, providing you invest in normal circumstances, by the end of the financial year, the 30th of June, a tax deduction of 133% of the money invested. Let me repeat that. A deduction, a total tax deduction of 133% of the money invested. On top of that, you're also entitled to receive 33% of the initial profits tax-free. Now, these are substantial benefits, and if you have the surplus money, and I stress surplus money, to take advantage of the situation, well, then I would certainly do so. But once again, let's use common sense. You don't invest in just any film production. You've got to look behind the scenes, so to speak. Look at the quality and the professionalism of the entrepreneurs or the promoters, and most important of all, the directors, the producers, and in fact the entire team. Make sure that they guarantee, if applicable, that the, shall we say, the rules that the government request will be adhered to, so that there are no taxation worries or problems after the initial decision to invest has been made. I have the gut feeling, and my gut is rarely wrong, that we won't see these benefits for very much longer. I'm not saying they'll be abolished, but I think they might be reduced. So if you have, as I said before, some surplus money, shop around, and you might like to invest in some very good Australian productions before the 30th of June. I'll see you next Monday. Good morning, everyone, and welcome once again. If you're in business for yourself, and I include farming in that context, take careful note of what I'm about to say. Some of you might appreciate the fact that on the 30th of June 1985, the investment allowance, as it's called, in other words, that 18% additional tax deduction, will be abolished. But that doesn't mean that you have to install the plant and equipment that you might buy or lease by the 30th of June. In fact, you have 2 years grace. But it's very, very important not to ignore that additional benefit, because after the 30th of June, there isn't the slightest chance of it being extended. Now, I don't mean that you rush in and buy some plant or equipment just for the sake of the investment allowance. You've got to need the plant and you've got to need the equipment. But what I am suggesting is that you go along to your accountant, you go along to your bank and discuss the situation with them. Now, quite frankly, there may be a cash flow problem if large sums of money are involved. Therefore, don't ignore the importance of leasing. You might know that we run a rural property, and we've leased quite a lot of our equipment because we always want to maintain that cash flow, that all-important cash flow, so that we can meet our bills on the time required. Now, the additional benefit to be gained is this, that when you install that plant and equipment, providing you've entered into a reasonable, meaningful contract, and that doesn't necessarily mean you've got to sign the contract, well, then you have the ability, the advantage of that 2 years grace, as I mentioned before. Now, I'm emphasising not only the investment allowance, but in the last couple of weeks I've emphasised the importance of investing in films again by the 30th of June because of the pending tax summit. Because I have that gut feeling, and I don't apologise for saying it, that many of the benefits that we've enjoyed in the past won't be around for very much longer. I leave that thought with you, and I'll see you again next Monday.
HMAS Brisbane, along with the vessels Perth and Hobart, formed the Royal Australian Navy's 1st Destroyer Squadron. This US-built ship is particularly versatile, with its main role being the air defence of the fleet. The vessel is fitted with modern combat data, sonar, radar communications, among its electronic systems. HMAS Brisbane has an impressive history. She saw action in Vietnam alongside ships of the US Navy. In 1976, the vessel took part in the Darwin relief operation after the city was devastated by Cyclone Tracy. Since then, she has taken part in a number of international exercises, visiting Gibraltar, London, Bombay and Singapore. Despite the rainy conditions, it was all hands on deck for the berthing in Newcastle Harbour. The Brisbane will be open to the public between 2 and 4 o'clock on Thursday and Sunday, when guided tours can be arranged.
The figures surprise no one by showing that the unemployment rate in the Hunter is much higher than the state and national averages. The Hunter's rate in November 1983 was 11.9%, dropping slightly to 11.4% in November 84. Newcastle's figures were even worse, 12.7% in 83 and 12.6% in 84. Despite the region's poor showing, the figures have at least ended speculation that our unemployment rate is twice the national average. Reaction to the figures was mixed. The federal member for Newcastle, Alan Morris, was cautiously optimistic, while the Newcastle Chamber of Commerce President Peter Evans said the results showed the need for more tertiary employment.
It's very obvious to us in the Chamber that there is an imbalance in terms of employment in this region, and the imbalance is that the tertiary sector is about 4% below the national average. And what we've been putting to the New South Wales government for quite some years is the proper decentralisation of government departments from the Sydney CBD to this region.
Trades Hall Secretary Peter Barrick says he wasn't surprised.
It doesn't surprise us, it certainly disappoints us, and because the figures are so bad that obviously we're going to have to sit down and have a look at it and determine what our response to it is going to be.
The Federal Shadow Minister for Housing and Construction, Michael Hodgman, was in town, and he was quick to criticise the state and federal governments.
I think you've got to stand up and fight, and I think I don't need to refer to any other statistics except the continuing high unemployment rate in this area, the lack of government activity, the lack of effective action.
Dick Law is the assistant principal as well as bandmaster of the Irrawang Public School. He formed the brass band 10 years ago. Since then, the musician has gained an enviable reputation of being the state's primary school brass band champion for the past 8 years. At a special assembly to mark his 10 years of service and achievement, the Minister for Education, Rod Cavalier, presented Mr. Trelaw with a signed certificate of congratulations. The Minister also used his visit to discuss with parents and staff the submission of a much-needed multi-purpose shelter at the school. Success is sweet, but for the 39 members of the band, it has meant hours of rehearsal to reach their present high standards. They gather to practice 4 lunchtimes a week, as well as 2 afternoons out of school lessons. But according to Mr. Trelaw, it's been time well spent. What have you enjoyed most about your career as band leader?
Perhaps seeing the children that have gone through the band enjoying the music along with me.
I've noticed that most of the band members are girls. Is there any reason for that?
Perhaps the boys find it more difficult to turn up lunchtime after lunchtime. There seem to be lots of games of soccer going on the playground, and naturally they want to be part of that as well.
How long will you continue to wave the banner for?
For as long as I'm at Irrawang School.
Right.
They won't make that.